Hey guys, welcome to a new video. It's been a long time. Today I want to talk about dependency injection. It's something lots of newcomers here. First of all, this is not something Laravel related or even PHP related. This is a concept, this is perhaps a design pattern. This is something that you can apply to most languages. So, what is dependency injection? I want to start this lesson with I want to actually explain what dependency injection is. So, first of all, what is a dependency? Let's imagine you have a page where the user pays for, I don't know, a subscription. And you have perhaps, let's say we have a class here. PHP. Okay, we have a class here. I don't know, payment page, payment controller, something. And we have a method to store a payment. So the user is, we're gonna execute this method for the user. Let's say he passes an amount. So I don't know, perhaps we have a request object. Let's just pretend we have an amount here. I don't really care right now how do we get this amount. We're talking about something else. So what would you do? Let's say you have a Stripe gateway. So perhaps you have a class that encapsulates a Stripe call, or you can even call Stripe directly. But you have a class that calls Stripe and does something. Perhaps creates a new record on a certain table, perhaps sends an email, I don't know. So you would do something like gateway, new Stripe gateway. I have already created a class. It just says Stripe when you call pay. And then you'd say, hey gateway, please pay $50 for me. Let's just add this param. So something like that. Hey gateway, pay $50 for me. Hey Stripe gateway, pay $50. Create a payment of $50. And that works. But now let's say your website is available in multiple countries. So in the US you want to use Stripe, but I don't know, in England you want to use PayPal. So you would do something like this. If the app country, again, this is not Laravel related, not directly, but I'm using Laravel as an example. This works in Symfony. Everything we're gonna talk here are concepts. I'm just saying we are gathering the country the app's running right this way. If it's not, let's say if it's Spain, let's just use an if. We just have two countries. If it's England, we want to use a PayPal gateway. And then we would call the gateway. Wow. Okay, that works. But it's a bit messy. It doesn't really look clean. If we want to test this function, how are we gonna do this? Perhaps we don't want the test to actually touch either Stripe or PayPal. So how are we gonna test this? That's the catch. If we were to write a test, let's say payment page test, we would do something like it charges in the US, and we would do something like payment page equals new payment page, and then we would say we would return this, and then we would, I don't know, assert that it's saying Stripe as it should. But how can we make sure this happens? I mean, we can really change the gateway. We would have to set the app country, and it would still call Stripe. So the obvious thing would be create a mock. If you don't know what a mock is, I think I have a video talking about this. A mock or a fake. I'm actually against mocks most of the time, but you would say, in this case we could use the mockery. We could say, hey, we want a mock of a gateway. So, and it should receive pay and return Stripe, something like that. But we can, because this is hard-coded. We are hard-coded, we are hard instantiating a dependency. So this dependency, it can change. It's hard-coded. And that's where we have dependency injection. That's where we would use it. So instead of relying on this condition to actually instantiate the dependency using the new keyword, we would do this. We would pass the gateway as an argument, and then whenever we call this payment page store, we would pass the gateway that should be used, either Stripe or PayPal, and the amount, and it would work flawlessly. So in this case, we have the mock, and we could say, hey, we want to use this mock, and it would work. And that's dependency injection. We're basically kind of changing the order of things. Instead of having the gateway instantiated right here, we are receiving it from another class, from another function. The function that calls this function is passing a gateway, and that would solve our problems. So I have a fake situation here. It's basically a payment service, and it's in this fconfig country US as Stripe, and it's not really testable because things are hard coded, and I mean, I hate this if here. How can we solve this using dependency injection? Well, as I said, we can pass the gateway, and now we can do this. So let's test this, okay? Let's open Tinker, which is a package that comes with Laravel. We already have a Laravel application loaded, so we want a payment service, which is here, and we want to make a payment using the Stripe gateway. We would pass it as an argument, so gateways, Stripe gateway, and we receive Stripe. Now we want to use the PayPal gateway. Okay, no problem. Oh, that's cool. So how do we make sure we're actually passing a gateway? Well, we actually can do this, but something, a really good idea is to type hint an interface. So we can say, let's create an interface, let's create a folder called contracts, let's say, actually let's go to gateway, or I have a folder called gateways, let's say gateway interface, or just gateway, something like that. So it's app gateways, interface gateway. It should have a public function called pay that expects an amount. So we go to Stripe gateway, we implement this gate contract, we go to PayPal gateway, and we implement this contract. So right now we are making sure that we want to receive a gateway. We want to make sure it actually has this method, otherwise we would get an error. So we have our service, PayPal, where is Stripe? Works great. So in a real situation, you would call this payment service, call the pay method, with passing this as an argument. Another option we have is injecting this dependency on the constructor. So we would do something like this. We expect a gateway, which in my opinion makes even more sense because this is a payment service that's supposed to deal with payments. So I think this should be a property of the class. And we would remove this from here, and we would call this gateway. And we would say we want to implement a gateway interface, and it would work perfectly. We would just pass it as an argument to the constructor. So how do we use this in real life? So I've already told you guys what dependency injection is. It's just that, it's that simple. So instead of having the dependency instantiated with the new keyword inside the method, we actually pass it to the method. Of course, dependency injection is not always needed. There are some situations where you don't need it. If you use facades on Laravel, you probably don't need it. A facade is not a problem. You can test a facade because it uses the container, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. So, most frameworks come with a thing called a container. Symfony has it. Laravel has it. Laravel is very powerful, by the way. Laravel's container is really, really powerful. It's, for me at least, one of its greatest features. So you have the container. The container is basically, imagine it's an armor on your app. It's basically something wrapping the whole app that has lots of classes inside it. Those are what we call the classes registered by the container. The container is an object. You can manually register classes to it. You can say perhaps not only classes, you can actually register anything, any string. Remember, when you say something like it only generates a string called app user, and of course if you import this, you would only say user class, and it would just give you the FQNS, the fully qualified namespace. So you can register many things to the container. You can perhaps have something like, let me show you guys something. If we go to Tinker and we say app, this app is a helper function. It resolves a dependency through the container, and we say session. Look what we have. That's because the session manager is registered a session. That's it. If we go to a facade, let me find some here. Okay, I don't really have a facade here, but I can even think of one right now. The event facade. We have this method called getFacadeAccessor, which Laravel uses to determine which object in the container it should access. So when you call the event facade, it's actually doing behind the scenes this. And as I said, this is just a bunch of pairs of key value. It's an array with a bunch of pairs, a bunch of key value pairs. So if we go something like this and we say app, cool. We have the app instance. We have an instance of the app. Okay, cool. And we say set events. We have the dispatcher. If we say session, we have the session manager. So this is the same as app session. It's the same thing. As I said, they are a bunch. They're just an array. It's basically just a huge array saying that session means session manager, events means dispatcher, and of course we can add things to that array. So if we go to our app service provider, we can say, I don't know, we can go to the boot method and we want to say, hey, container. We're accessing the container. Say helper. It just does this. If we pass an argument, it resolves it. If we don't pass anything, it just gets an instance of the container. So, hey container, we want to bind something. We want to say, when anyone say Stripe gateway, give them an instance of the Stripe gateway. Okay, we've bound this to the container. So if we do Stripe gateway, look, it's an instance of our Stripe gateway. And Laravel uses a container to resolve all its classes. So when you go to a route, if we go to our routes and we say pages controller store, behind the scenes Laravel, it's not new in this class and calling store. It's using the container to resolve this class and call store. And here's where we have a very nice type of magic. If we type hint this, let's say we type hint the Stripe gateway. If we do this, let me show you guys something. And we instantiate this class through the container, so app services payment service, and I call pay. Look, we are using the Stripe gateway, but we didn't pass any argument. So how did that happen? Well, behind the scenes, when we resolved this class through the container, Laravel said, hey, this class needs a gateway argument. Do we have a gateway? No, we don't. So I'm gonna use reflection. I'm gonna search a bit. Let me see if I can find this gateway class. So if it finds this class, it automatically instantiated. And that's really, really nice. So resolving stuff through the container is great. It's really awesome. And let me show you guys another cool thing. Notice this is not bound to the container. We haven't registered it. We did register the Stripe gateway, but not this one. So Laravel is going to search for it, and if it's found, it's going to bind it to the container and return it. Let me show you guys a really cool trick. So how can we actually use this in real life? Well, this is already very useful because we can test it real easily. But remember, we actually want to register to have different gateways depending on the country. Let me show you guys something. If we pass a gateway here, the gateway contract, let me show you guys. See, we have an error. This is not instantiable because it's an interface. But we can do something really cool with it. So let me show you guys something. We are injecting an interface. And remember that we can bind stuff in Laravel's container. So what would happen if we bound? Remember, this is just a string, okay? Let me show you guys. When we say app gateways, gateway, it's only a string. That's all it is. So we are actually passing a string, and when we register this, when we register, we're gonna be registering a string. So saying this right here, I just imported it right here. It's the same as saying app bind gateway, but in a really nice notation. That's all it's happening. You're just getting the fully qualified namespace. So you can say, hey Laravel, whenever the app wants a gateway class, which is actually a contract, it's an interface, but whenever the application requires this dependency, do the following. Just give them a PayPal gateway instance instead. So take a look. We expect a gateway instance. We have a PayPal gateway. We are binding it to the container. And if we do the following, you guys are gonna notice we use PayPal because we bound it to the container. We said, hey Laravel, whenever the app asks you for a gateway, give them a PayPal gateway. And we could do the same to Stripe. So a really cool trick we can have is we can say the following. If the country is US, bind a Stripe gateway. Now if it's not the US, you can bind a PayPal gateway. And now we can pass different gateways to this class, and the class doesn't even know about it. It doesn't care. It's not its responsibility. It just wants to pay. It just wants to pay a certain amount through the gateway. Of course, we would have more logic here. Otherwise, there would be no sense to have this class. But it doesn't really care. It just wants to pay. It just wants to make a payment. It doesn't care if it's PayPal, if it's Braintree, if it's Stripe. It just wants the payment. So if we go to the, we shouldn't put this here, but it's just for this lesson's purpose. If we say the country is US, oh, let's check. Country, it's US. If we resolve this through the container, we get Stripe. Now, if we change this for Spain. We get PayPal, and that's one of the things the container is very useful at. You can do many things with the container. You should check Laravel's documentation. You can do something like this. Hey, when in a specific class, where's the service provider? When in a specific class, so we can say, when, I don't know, payment service asks for a gateway, give PayPal. When refund service asks for a gateway, give it Stripe. We can do this, and that's really awesome. That's really gonna help you in your application. When you combine dependency injection with the container, the possibilities are limitless. So testing this becomes much easier. If we're testing, if we were to test this class, in the test we could just say the following. Let's say we have a payment service test, and we can say something like it charges in the US. We could just say something like that. We could use a mock, so we could say we would be using mock or a mock. Let's say Stripe gateway, and should receive pay and return some blah blah blah. And then you could say something like this. Hey, please bind the gateway class, the gateway interface, to this mock, and it would work. Or even better, you could have something called Stripe gateway fake, something like that, a class called Stripe gateway fake. So something like that, and we say, hey, please substitute this. Whenever we ask for the gateway, give this fake, and this fake would have the same methods, but it would have assertions. It's really similar to what Laravel has. We have a bunch of fakes here that we can use instead of mocks. So instead of just asserting that a method was called, we can actually assert stuff. So take a look at the dispatch method. It adds something to the class, and then we can assert that something was dispatched, and we can do the same here. Or perhaps you can do several things. You can test this very easily. So that's the lesson on dependency injection and a bit of the container. The container is not a Laravel feature. Laravel has a great container, but other containers exist either as standalone packages or Symfony has its own container. I think Slim has, I'm not sure, but the container is a very powerful thing that you should be using in your project. So that's it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson.